So this is going to become a regular thing on my Friday show. Didn't do it last week. Frankly, don't know why. Kind of slipped my mind. I was making picks on every game, but realized that's too many games to have gone into the numbers to make picks for. So best bets of the week. 500 straight up last week for me. 500 against the spread as well. So I don't know. I made an opening, call it a par. Bogey on a tough hole perhaps, but looking to bounce back this week. Let me start with a game that, boy, just needs to go Oregon State's way for no other reason. I think they're going to come out and play with their hair on fire is why I'm picking the Beavs. -3.5 against Fresno State. Oregon State last week, a disastrous, completely disastrous first game against Cal. A true freshman who had, per Pro Football Focus, their highest game grade for a true freshman's first game in the history of Pro Football Focus. So JKS carved them up on their home field. They are back at Reser Stadium before 2 straight on the road. Trent Bray is starting to get to the point where he could be coaching for his job. He is 5-8 so far as Oregon State's head coach. They started 4-1 last year, went 1-6 down the stretch. They lose a game that I and many others picked them to win week 1 against Cal. And even if they did lose, which of course they did, it shouldn't have been as bad as it was. There was a disagreement amongst the quarterback and coaching staff on the sideline. You know what? I think that's actually a good thing that there was some fire over there. Fresno State, first-year head coach Matt Entz. They've got E.J. Warren at quarterback, who is fine, but I don't think that Oregon State is unaware of how important this game is. I think you see a fire and a focus that is required because the next 2 games for Oregon State, at Texas Tech, number 23 team in the country, at Oregon, a top 10 team in the country. The likelihood you win one of those games, maybe you could stun Texas Tech, but on their home field, you can't expect that. And Trent Bray, after a 5-7 year, just cannot afford to start the season 0-4. So Oregon State, this opened at 2.5, moved to 3.5. I think Matt Entz is a really good coach. I think he can succeed at Fresno State, get them to be at least on the cusp of being a playoff team one day in the New World Pac-12. These teams will be conference foes next year. But give me Oregon State. I will swallow the 3.5 points. I think the Beavs win. I think that they cover there as well. Also, my game of the week. Mentioned this earlier in the show. Finally, the pick is here. Give me Oklahoma -5.5 against Michigan. Everything on paper here favors the Sooners. They're at home. They have the more experienced quarterback. I think they've got way more playmakers on offense. I do like Justice Haynes at running back for the Wolverines. I like their tight end. Bryce Underwood has got some serious promise, but he's not going up against New Mexico's defense this week. He's going up against Oklahoma on the road against Brent Venables in a game that Coach Venables simply has to win. He cannot afford to lose. I think he will get it done because I don't know where Michigan's explosive plays are coming from. And though I like the Michigan defense, they weren't exactly perfect week 1 against New Mexico, a program that's got a first-year head coach. It wasn't bad, but it certainly wasn't great. I think Oklahoma at home has got a little bit more offense. I think they cover the 5.5 and beat the Wolverines in the game of the week. Now, how about this one? My third favorite before a couple of underdogs. Penn State swallow 41.5 against FIU. First-year head coach for the Panthers. They played Bethune-Cookman in their first game of the year, beat them soundly. That's not exactly Penn State. I think the Nittany Lions in this spot, watch out for the backdoor cover. That's what happened last week against Nevada. I think Penn State leaves absolutely, positively, no doubt. FIU doesn't have anywhere close to the amount of talent that Penn State does. They are not the sort of group of 5 program at this time that can go toe-to-toe with one of the 3 best teams in all of college football. And Penn State being, of course, at home gives me all the confidence in the world that they're going to go and win this game big. You could see like a 48-3. You could see the Penn State defense pitch a shutout in this spot. You've got the second week of Jim Knowles being there as Penn State's defensive coordinator. They didn't allow a touchdown until the starters were pulled last week. I worry about it, but you know what? 41.5 is a lot. I think Penn State will win and cover the 41.5. My 2 underdogs of the week, and I talked about these games earlier this week on the show. Absolutely, positively stoked to watch these games because they are really fun. They are really, really important. Let's start with Kansas, Missouri. The border war is back for the first time in 14 years. I'm taking Kansas +6.5. I think Missouri wins the game outright. I will take Kansas to cover the 6.5 points. Rule of thumb, in a rivalry game, when you have 2 teams that are not miles and miles apart in terms of a talent gap, which I don't think is what you have here. You can argue there's a gap. You can say Missouri's better. John Miller of Locked On Mizzou certainly feels that way. I don't think that gap is the size of the Grand Canyon. I think it's probably even smaller than the driving distance between these two schools. So I think that Kansas, in a rivalry game like this, can hang around and keep it close. I think Missouri wins, but I do think Kansas covers that 6.5 points because in a rivalry game, you take the points. And you know what? If Mizzou goes out and proves me wrong, you're going to hear me give them full faith and credit, not of the U.S. government, but of Spencer McLaughlin's respect here on Locked On College Football. So definitely Kansas plus 6.5. And the same line for my second underdog this week, I like Mississippi State plus 6.5 against Arizona State. Same thing here. Arizona State to me on serious upset alert. Mississippi State is not just a quarterback, or it doesn't just have a quarterback that is better than you'd think. In Blake Shapen, it's a name that most people are probably going to mock. They didn't look good in the first half last week. I get it. Teams can progress. They can level up. The track record so far of Jeff Lebby with Blake Shapen as his quarterback is you're going to get some production there. This game is being played in Starkville in front of the home fans. The cowbells will be a-ringing. And I think Arizona State finds a way to win because they've got a little bit more, a solid amount more continuity than does Mississippi State. But I don't think this is a game that was a 7-point contest in Tempe last year. I don't think this Arizona State team's quite where they were last year, but they're very close. But Mississippi State is better. Mississippi State as home. I will not be surprised in the slightest if Mississippi State goes on to pull this upset outright in what would be just a complete disaster for the Big 12. Not just for Kenny Dillingham, because that would remove any possibility of the Sun Devils being an at-large playoff team this season. But if one of your top teams cannot beat a bottom third SEC team, you perpetuate the cyclical narrative that the Big 12 is just far behind. The Big 12 can't keep up. The Big 12 can't do this. This is one of those games where there's not that much to gain for Arizona State, so much as there's something you're trying to avoid. And that is a sizable upset loss that would not look good on your own resume or your conference's resume. So, once again, 5 best bets of the week. I like Oregon State minus 3.5 at home against Fresno State, Oklahoma minus 5.5 against Michigan, Penn State swallowing 41.5 points against Florida International, Kansas plus 6.5 at Missouri, Mississippi State plus 6.5 against Arizona State. Cannot wait. Enjoy the football this weekend, everybody. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.